See, now it's small.
There you go. All
You
right.
look good, kid.
Great.
Thank you, everyone, for joining, and I really appreciate we've got the top staff and the leadership of the Connecticut Paid Family Medical Leave Authority, which, as you know, is our new innovative entity that was set up here in Connecticut, and really excited to have them. They've been helpful. We had an early call when it was just starting to percolate, and now we've got some more tangible things. And Andrea, I really appreciate your taking the time to maybe listen to everyone at once, so we don't have to always call you. This may be a really collaborative way to approach it. So thank you.
We're happy to do it.
Maybe I could ask everyone if I could just go around and I call on people so you know who they are and if that's okay. And then maybe you could introduce your team. Great. So I'll just go by who in the order here. I have Craig Mitchell. Do you want to say hello? Craig's from Eastern Connecticut. I guess he's on mute, but.
Yeah. Hi, guys. Craig Mitchell. I'm the president of Local 493 down in Eastern Connecticut. Thank you for your time today.
Great. Rocco?
Yep, I'm Rocco Calo. I'm the principal officer of 1150. We represent the men and women at Sikorsky Aircraft.
Terry P.
Hi, I'm a business agent for Local 1150.
Right. Bill, 677, Bill P.
Bill Petruno, president of Local 677 out of Waterbury, Connecticut.
Sal, who was very helpful in getting this all organized.
Yeah, good afternoon. Sal Bay, Principal Officer, Local 443 in New Haven.
And then I have, I think, a group from 671. Can't see who's there, but you want to introduce yourselves?
Tony Lepore, Principal Officer, 671. We have Artie Belt, Business Agent, and Eric Donner, Business Agent.
Thanks. Robert Ziobrowski.
Yep, Robert Zabrowski, Principal Officer of Local 1035 out of South Windsor.
Vito.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Vito Bonanno, Vice President and Business Agent, Local 443, New Haven, Connecticut.
The Honorable John Capobianco.
John Capobianco, Principal Officer, 677 out of Waterbury, Connecticut. And hello to all my brothers and sisters out there.
Robert D. from Fairfield County.
Thank you. Robert D. Girolamo, Principal Officer of Local 191 in Fairfield County.
Right. And I think I have 145. I can't see who's there, but Teamsters 145.
You're muted, Dennis.
Is it Dennis?
Dennis,
Okay.
you're on mute. Dennis, you got to unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm Dennis Novak, at Local 145, Principal Officer.
Steve French.
I hooked you up, Dennis.
Steve French, Chief Steward, Local 1150.
Great. And if we could, Bob, do you want to just introduce your crew? I think you got a whole crew from Chevron.
Yes. I thought we were late, so I'm glad you guys are running a little late. I'm Bob Chevry. With me is John Fussell, Dave Chevry. I don't know if Alex is on or not. He's home with COVID.
Yeah, I'm on as well, Bob.
All right. Well, stay away, Alex. Stay home.
Yeah, I'm way over here.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Bob. And I see Tom and Bevan too down the bottom here.
Yep.
And
yep.
You want to just say hello?
Sweet. Local 493.
Yeah, I'm
Principal
Officer Tom Cole. I'm a business agent with Local 1150.
Hey, Tom. Tom Baziet.
Yep, Tom Bayusik, President, Business Agent, Local 443, New Haven.
Great. And then it's just, I think that's DJ and someone else, Mia Bridge. I'm not sure who
Mia Bridgeforth.
Oh, okay.
Mia Bridgeforth, trustee, Local 1150.
Welcome, Mia. Hey, DJ, I think's on too, right?
Yep. How's it going, DJ? BA for 1150.
So thank you, Andre. That's our crew. Do you want to maybe tell the group about your team?
Sure. Excuse me. I'm Andrea Barton-Reeves. I'm the CEO of the Connecticut Paid Leave Authority, and I'll ask Erin and Michael to introduce themselves.
I'm Erin Choquette, and I'm the General Counsel for the Authority.
And I'm Michael Caesar, Associate General Counsel. And I just want to say I'm loving some of the facial hair on this meeting. I rarely get fellow bearded brothers.
Thank you. I think, Andrea, we had a bunch of questions. I don't know if you thought it best to go to that, or do you want to just give a quick update on where you are, and maybe then we could open it up if that's okay?
Yeah, I mean, we can give our update in, less than a minute. So we know that last year we were collecting the 0.5% and putting it into the trust fund so that we could pay benefits this year. We opened up the application process in December. In the first 2 hours, we got 400 calls. So we know people were really waiting. We've got about 5,500 claims that people have made to date, and benefit payments start this month. And that's essentially where we are.
And I want to thank you. As calls and questions started coming in, I did take advantage of both the chat and calling, and I ended up with some very helpful folks at AFLAC, I think in Windsor. And, so I think the system's really productive. So thank you for all that. I think what I'd like to do is just open it up and, raise your hand, if you will, use the raise your hand function. So, and if you have questions, let's get them out and start talking.
PJ, I don't have a raise my hand function on
Okay.
here, so I'm just gonna go. How's that?
Go ahead. Why don't you start, Sal? Thank you.
All right. Listen, the main question I have from my members is they get sick time in their contracts, they get personal days, and they get vacation that they accrue. Now, what can the company take from them and make them use, and how much can they make them use of that accrual time for this paid sick leave? And then I got a follow up to that. And
Sure. All right.
so if they make them, let's say they can make them use 2 weeks, just to say,
Yeah.
does that 2 weeks not count towards the paid part? Does that extend their paid amount out further?
That's
Okay,
right.
that's
Yeah.
my question.
That's right. So they can, a company can ask a person to use their sick, vacation, or other accrued time, but they have to allow them to keep up to 2 weeks of that time. So what I always tell people when I give these webinars is that the reason that part of the law came about is that people would complain that when they were taking family medical leave when it was unpaid, they were asked to exhaust all of their accrued time, no matter what bucket it fell in. And then, they'd either get sick again, or there'd be some big family celebration that they couldn't go to because they'd used up all their time, or they'd have to take it unpaid, which is, usually a hardship for most people. So that's really the way that it works. So if someone has 5 weeks, let's say, of accrued vacation, and they've got a few weeks of sick, and they've got a few weeks of personal time, an employer could conceivably ask them to use all of that to cover all or part of the time that they're out for those 12 weeks. But they can't make them exhaust the whole thing. So I'll let Aaron answer the question about how that impacts the rest.
Just let me follow up with that. Now, let's say, for example, they got 4 weeks vacation, a week sick days, and a week personal days. Can the employee decide what he wants? Like, can he say to them, I can keep 2 weeks. You want to make me use all that, 7 weeks. You're going to make me use 5 weeks, but I want to keep my 5 sick days and 5 vacation. Can the employee tell the employer what 2 weeks he wants to keep? Or can the employer say, you're using your vacation, sick, you can keep these days?
The employer can set the rules. So they can say you have to use your sick time first. You have to use sick time, then vacation. They can set the order and they can set the rules with that caveat of they can't make you exhaust. So if you only had 1 week of sick time and no other time, they can't make you use that sick time. Even if you had 3 weeks of sick time, they'd make you use a week. So the employer does have the ability to establish those rules. Obviously, collective bargaining comes into play here. So if you've collectively bargained for entitlements or an order for state employees, for example, the rule is state employees have to use their sick time for their own serious health condition, then they can choose to use anything else. That's collectively bargained. They can't just change that now. All they can do is say, we've got to hold on to the 2 weeks. And then if, say you've got a situation where the employee has to take, 10 weeks of leave, and they only have 2 weeks of sick time that they can be required to use. because they're going to hold off on their vacation. They'll start their leave, say on January 1st. They'll use their 2 weeks of sick time to get them through January 15th. And then their CT paid leave will start for January 15th. They will have 12 weeks of CT paid leave available to them. If they're using some of their employer provided time, that doesn't cut across the entitlement that we provide.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead, just raise your hand or jump in.
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
Question I have, I represent the employees at Hospital St. Raphael's in New Haven. I recently had an employee out ill, and his timeout bridged the gap from the end of 21 to the beginning of 2022. The hospital at one point approached him telling him he has to stop using the short-term disability provided by the hospital and switch over to CTPL as of the first of the year. If not, he could face disciplinary action based on a new policy, which they never negotiated. So when I put in a request for that information, they backpedaled and they don't have a policy. Is that the right thing to do for the company to take away from their short-term disability and put it on the CTPL?
Well, we have seen companies change their policy with respect to short-term disability with the advent of the implementation of Connecticut paid leave. We've seen companies change so that we are the payer of first resort and the short-term disability policy becomes the payer of last resort. And it's more and more of a trend because the paid leave benefit is available. Some companies have kept their short-term disability because the maximum benefit that you can get from the paid leave is 60 times the current minimum wage, which is basically $780 a week. A lot of folks make less than that, but a lot of folks make more than that. So what we tell people is that when you come to us, we will pay you the benefit amount that we calculate based on your wages and the formula in the statute. And if you then need to have that supplemented and your employer offers a short-term disability that can sort of top that up and bring you closer to what you usually bring home, then you can do that. But some employers, we are noticing they're becoming the payer of last resort so that they're eliminating that opportunity for people to top up to be able to get closer to the wages that they usually bring home. The disciplinary piece, I'm not that sure about in terms of what's been. I agree with you. If it's not been negotiated, then that's a whole different conversation. But I think compelling people to come to the paid leave authority to get their wage replacement. There's nothing in our statute that compels employers to send them to us to get paid.
Thank you.
We are seeing a lot of insurance brokers telling us that they're basically renegotiating or telling their clients to renegotiate to have them be the top off. I haven't seen a lot of people who say, if you get CTPL benefits, you don't get anything from short-term disability, unless they're getting their full amount from us. But it really is, in a collective bargaining situation that, nothing in our rules, nothing in our statutes supersede collective bargaining.
Great.
Except for that 2-week thing, the 2 weeks and holding the 2 weeks of accruals, that they can't exhaust that. That arguably would supersede collective bargaining, but it benefits the employees. So I think it's somewhat of a moot issue.
So if we could stay on the disability aspect of this a little bit. We have the people at Sikorsky have disability insurance, right? It's based on their hourly rate. I think it tops out at about $640 a week. Obviously the paid family leave is a little bit more than that. I know when we spoke before, we said we could collect disability in conjunction with paid family medical leave. We're running into a scenario where the company has taken the position that based on the disability policy, that they're going to make Connecticut Family Leave the first payer. I'm hearing this happening all over. And they're only going to pay up to the max that they would be able to get out get from their disability policy. So the paid family medical leave exceeds that. The SPD has language that says they will do this offset if there is a compulsory state disability benefit. Is paid family leave considered a compulsory state disability benefit? It is not.
No, I mean, no one is required to apply to us. It's not like workers' comp where it's the
Right.
employer says this is a workers' comp covered thing. You have to go to workers' comp. I don't, Michael, you've got the insurance background. Can you think of anything that would be a compulsory?
I wouldn't think of it in the compulsory terms, but sometimes the contracts say will reduce for any benefits that you receive or are eligible to receive. It depends on the language of the policy. I wouldn't necessarily call that compulsory. I'm thinking compulsory is, maybe workers' comp or something like that. But I wouldn't think of our plan as compulsory in that.
It's not compulsory. And we have people who are calling in and just inquiring about benefit and determining based on their employer's policy, whether they're going to apply for unemployment insurance or whether or not they're going to tap into their own personal disability insurance. We've got some folks that have, literally their own personal AFLAC policy. And they're trying to decide among that menu of choices that they have, which one would actually give them the most money to bring home. But so that in that instance, people have choices, and it's absolutely not compulsory.
So, and then the other thing that is happening, right? If someone, and again, we're in the grievance procedure on this, but I just want to hear your opinions on it. The company seems to think that they can require someone to file for paid family leave prior to taking disability. Now, we have members that will forego the paid family leave and just collect the disability. For instance, and I use this example a lot. Someone breaks their ankle on January 1st, right? One of our represented members would go out on disability rather than collect the paid family medical leave because they might know that they have an 80-year-old parent that is getting a hip replacement in April, right? And they want to save their family medical leave for that point in time. There is nothing that requires someone to, again, I think we already answered this, to file, nor can the company force them to take the leave.
Just to be clear, an employer could purchase a short-term disability policy that says they're the secondary payer.
Yeah, but that's not the disability policy I'm speaking of is collectively bargained, right?
I mean that, I don't. So FMLA says you can permit or require an employee to use your employer provided benefits. And our statute says an employee can receive benefits from the authority and the employer concurrently, as long as the total amount doesn't exceed 100%. Those are the two statutory provisions. So anything else is contractual.
Yeah. So John and Bob, I know you guys and Alex and Dave, you've been working on this for us. So if you want to jump in on this, I just want to make sure I've asked all the right questions and we got what we need.
Yeah, Rock, I think you have. I think the language we have has both. It has the statutory policy, the term compulsory state disability has that language. Then it also has a benefit you can or are entitled to. To Michael made that statement that, from the insurance, many times the policy will say a benefit that you have, that you're entitled to, not that you have to take it. So we have that kind of language, unfortunately, in it that will make it a grayer area, because I would agree it's not a compulsory state disability benefit. However, it is a benefit that you are entitled to. So we got both language in there is what I'm kind of saying. John, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that. I'm trying to find the exact language.
Yeah, Bob, DJ here.
The only thing that I would add to that is that it seems that the short-term disability policy, simply the language of that policy to which we belong to requires, if there's another benefit, for that other benefit to be utilized first, which I think is one of the exceptions that Andrea and Aaron raised.
That's right. I think, see, I know that Stephen has his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of build off of Rocco's question. So you answered the question of whether or not it's compulsory, but not necessarily whether or not it's a disability benefit, which we don't think it is, right? Is it defined as a disability benefit, or is family medical leave not a disability benefit?
It's a tricky question to answer, because to the extent that it provides benefits for someone for their own serious health condition, there's an argument that it is sort of the equivalent of a disability benefit. Obviously, to the extent that it provides benefits for caregiver leave or military qualifying exigency leave, it's not. We're trying to deal with this on the tax side of it. Many states, for a few years now, have been asking the IRS to issue the guidance as to whether you have to treat the medical leave benefits differently than the family leave benefits. And the IRS keeps saying that it will, but they haven't yet. So we're kind of in a holding pattern on that. From a negotiating perspective,
does that mean you're
make use of that ambiguity?
Aaron, does that mean you're looking for some guidance, an update to the statute, or a precedent in legal nature?
We really want the IRS to, because this is an issue that all state programs have. Washington State, Massachusetts, they've actually submitted requests for opinion from IRS. And
so, okay. So you're looking for the IRS, some kind of guidance document, opinion letter from IRS.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, to the extent that it's ambiguous, that's something you guys can utilize in your discussions, because it's just sort of not exactly the disability payment. It's just not, but it's very similar to it if you're talking about your own serious health condition. So I can see both sides.
And it's not settled, so John and Bob and others can argue that, and they have something to stand on. Good.
That's right. So what I was going to answer Stephen's question, why I'm shaking my head no so vigorously, is that nowhere in the statute does it specifically define the paid leave benefit as a disability benefit. And so I think that, when you are at the bargaining table and you're getting that pushback from the employer, they'd be hard pressed to find that specific language to come back and say to you, it is in fact a disability benefit. Therefore, we can treat it differently, because it isn't defined that way at all.
Let me ask this. Has anybody looked at the legislative history?
See, John.
Excuse me?
No, John was waving because I think he wants to raise his
Yeah,
hand.
I want to say something.
Yeah.
But John had a question, Fussell.
Yeah.
Sure.
Has anyone looked at the legislative history to try to answer that question, rather than looking just at the statute itself?
The legislative history doesn't get into that.
Okay, good.
The legislative history, PJ, you were there.
Yeah.
There were lots of late nights.
It was not. Yeah,
it wasn't detailed.
Yeah, my sense, Aaron, right, when they were passing this, it really wasn't about, traditionally when they've done statutes, it was kind of a move the ship along. So, but that's to your advantage, John. Yes.
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
Yeah. The legislative history is all about, is this a good idea? Very, very blue sky kind of discussions. It was
to be covered, what the structure should look like. And I'm just saying, I will admit I'm a total nerd. Not only did I read the statute and all the legislative history, I also read the statutes of all the other states that had paid leave as well. So I know that it does. Yeah, I need more to do, and I need to get out more. I'll be the first to admit that. But
So and that may be something this session, right? If there are, this may be a question for me. Do you anticipate a tweaking bill or a tune-up bill from anyone? Are you asking for any changes?
We talked about a few technical changes with the labor chairs. I mean, there's some things to kind of clean up, who an officer is, and there's some inadvertent, I think how can I put that? I think part of it that was probably inadvertently drafted. So here's an example. If you receive a medical benefit under workers' compensation, but you're still working, you can be barred from receiving the paid leave benefit because it bars any wage replace and any benefit that you get under workers' comp or UI. And I don't think that's really what was intended. I think if you have a permanent partial disability, you're at work, you're working for an employer that's covered with one or more employees, you're contributing to the plan, and you go and you apply. It's like, oh wait, you're getting a partial payment and all of a sudden you're ineligible. I don't think that's what they meant to do. So it would be small tweaks like that. Nothing.
Yeah, very technical in nature.
Yeah.
Okay. So John, Bob will be on guard for that this session, just to see if someone is trying to, and we'll work with Erin and her team and Andrea.
Yeah.
Andrea, you mentioned that you read the legislative history. PJ, if you can get us a copy of that, it may be useful to us in our
I think I didn't get that from the library or OLR, right? I don't know if it's done yet, but yeah, John, I'm on that.
Yeah, you can get it from PJ. You can get it from the CGA.
It's on the site now. I used to have to go to the state library, right?
Yeah. So
Good.
it's I mean, they talked a lot in the Senate in particular, and they talked a fair amount in the House. I don't remember there being a whole lot of really useful. Certainly,
but
from
that
our
may be
perspective,
good
there wasn't a
for-
whole lot of useful stuff. It was all,
That's what
again,
John needs, right? So when they come at you with, oh, you can't, oh yeah, well, here, I've read through the whole thing. Doesn't say it anyway. Yeah, good.
Yeah, it was Public Act 19-25.
Mm-hmm.
To help you when you search it under CGA.
Thank you.
Cappy.
John. Yes.
All right. So originally, when you started speaking about paid family medical leave, you said that, or Aaron said this, that you can, the employer can require you to be on paid family medical leave, correct?
No, they're FMLA. So the separate FMLA statute says
Okay, there's
an
two.
employer can permit or require an employee to use vacation, sick leave, PL,
Okay.
while they're taking FMLA leave. But you can't make them exhausted. You have to let them hold 2 weeks in reserve.
Right.
So that's under the FMLA side of things.
Okay. All
Our
right.
side just says employees can get both us and the employer provided benefits at the same time.
As long as it doesn't.
Thank you very much for clearing that up. Thank you.
Welcome.
Bob Chevry. So you're going to be writing a policy that we're going to use in contract negotiations, or should we be sending out notifications to the employers right now of our willingness to sit down and get a policy with these companies? Well, even if the contract's not open.
Well, each contract would be different, Cap. Some have a lot of entitlements, some don't have a lot of entitlements. But
Right.
yeah, I think we should address it, especially some that may not open for quite a while.
So the one that you were talking about with Rock was according to, for Sikorsky's alone.
Yeah, they have a
Okay.
short-term disability product, which, Rock, again, it appears they use New York Life, and I don't know if that's an ASO or, whether they self-insure or whether they actually purchase insurance.
Yeah, they're self-insured. New York Life is just a TPA.
That's what I thought. Okay, good.
PJ, did you want to raise the question we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, and John, I think this is for you, the married couple issue, where the company has a policy, I believe, right, where it says, oh, if two employees who happen to be married to each other both work at the same company here, if they try and go out on a paid family medical leave, they can only receive half. Am I saying that right, Cappy?
You're muted, Cap.
I thought you were talking to Fussell.
No,
What
no,
asked me-
John Capobianco, you had given me that document where they were this couple, I don't even know what the details were, why they had to take a leave, but the company's claiming you only get half of the benefit.
I don't think that came from 677.
All right, who
I
gave me
think
that?
Sal, if
Is it
I'm not
Sal?
mistaken, was talking about that. You're talking about a married couple that works for the same employer?
Yes.
Okay. That wasn't me, PJ.
Who
Yeah,
gave
it
me
wasn't
that?
me. Wasn't me. I don't know.
Okay.
That's a
Wait,
question.
was I
So,
Well, so while
It
it's
wasn't
out
me.
there, let's just
It
ask
wasn't
the
me. I'm
question.
remarried.
Why don't we do this? Hold on.
I'll
Why don't we
answer
do
it
this?
anyway.
Everybody be quiet for 5 seconds, and whoever sent that question in can speak up. And if nobody speaks up in 5 seconds, we'll move on. Go ahead.
Well,
Well,
no,
I
I
can
think we,
answer it because it may come up again.
yeah, let's
Let's
see.
just-
I'm gonna look it up while we're talking. Someone sent me the plan. I can't remember who, but
PJ
All right.
didn't even wait 5 seconds. He just chimed in, Sal.
sorry,
I
boss.
think he needs a timeout.
Okay. So
I have a
under,
question.
Hold on, just let Andrea answer the question, please.
yeah, both Aaron and I are going to answer it because Aaron is more of the expert when it comes to FMLA and bonding leave, because there is a distinction there. But every person who works for an employer, so if you're taking leave for any other reason besides bonding, which has an exception under FMLA, that person is a unique individual and a unique employee within the organization, and an employer cannot tell an employee that they have to split their time because they are married. So if they're both going out because they have a serious health condition, as an example, like let's say one is going to be an organ donor, and the other person is having major surgery for another reason, they need to be treated individually. An employer cannot tell them that they have to split their time. That is not permissible under the statute.
So there are 3 statutes. So as Andrea said, if you're both sick, you both get your full entitlement. There are 3 statutes that are going to apply. Mostly, sounds like everybody here has employers with more than 50 employees. So you've got the federal FMLA, Connecticut FMLA, and then paid leave. Bear with me because they're slightly different. Federal FMLA says married spouses who work for the same employer, presumably are married, may be required. They're not forced to be required, but the employer can require them to share their time if they want to go out to bond with a newborn adopted child or foster child. But the employer can't say you get 6 and you get 6. They have to say it's up to the parents what they're going to do. So one could take all 12, the other could take, one could take 10, the other could take 2. But the employer could say you have to share. Federal FMLA also says you have to share if each of the spouses wants to take leave to care for their own parent. So if my husband and I both worked for Sikorsky and they had this policy and I want to take care of my mom in a year and I used up 8 weeks, and then my husband said, oh no, now I need to take care of my mom. Technically, the employer could say, you're married, Rob, you only have 4 weeks left. It's meant to be this sort of sop to small employers. Connecticut FMLA says employers can require the spouses to share if they're bonding with a newborn or if they're caring for any family member. This is one of those inadvertent changes. I really don't think anybody intended it, but they did. It's now that's the statute, so we'll have to see if it gets changed this year. But that means that if my husband and I both work at Sikorsky and our daughter gets sick, technically the company could say, we're going to make you share.
Is it share the time or share the money, Aaron?
Share the time. Because
they're saying the money, as I remember the question, however I got it, was they're saying you only get half of the benefit.
Right. And so that's the 3rd statute, right? So the FMLAs are all about the time. The 3rd statute is ours, Connecticut paid leave. And our statute specifically says, no matter what the employers do with the time, you're never required to share the money. So if Rob and I work for the same company, they want us to share our leave so that if I take 6 weeks, he can only take 6 weeks. No matter what, I still could get 12 weeks. I might lose my job, right? Like it might be a family decision that we're both going to take the full amount of time. And one of us is just going to accept that we don't have job protected leave but at least get the money for the 12 weeks. So there's no requirement to share the money.
I think it was the policy was share the entitlement. So this was in the company policy for a birth. It was you must share the entitlement to 12 weeks.
They probably mean the time then.
Okay.
Rob,
Are they allowed to have that in their policy?
Yeah.
Yeah,
They are.
for that's why for the bonding, that's
For
why
a
we want to be
child.
specific. That's
Again,
right.
I didn't, and I wasn't aware, I didn't ask, I didn't know what the circumstances were, maybe because of HIPAA or other, they don't want to say. Is it different if it's a sickness or illness or care situation
For
versus birth?
federal FMLA, it's you only share if you're caring for your parent. But the new revisions to state FMLA, it's caring for any family member. So if I took, you know, my daughter's sick, I want to take leave. My husband also wants to take leave at the same time. The employer could say you have to share that entitlement, and the two of you work out who's going to take what time. If you both want to take 6 weeks, good luck. If you want to take 4 weeks and then the other one take 8, that's fine. Honestly, most people haven't paid attention to that change in Connecticut FMLA. I don't know of a lot of employers who were looking for that change in FMLA, in the Connecticut FMLA, and it wouldn't surprise me if it gets fixed this year. But technically, they're allowed to require that sharing of the job protected leave entitlement, but they don't share the money.
Right.
But
So
they can't dictate what that, I know, but Rob and DJ have their hands up. I just want to make sure we recognize that. But to Erin's point, they can't tell you, you spouse A get 6 weeks and you spouse B get 6 weeks. The spouses get to decide how that's divided. So that's the flaw in that policy. They can't decide on behalf of the employees how that time is divided.
So and that's for a single dependent, right? So Erin used the example of her daughter. If if you needed 12 weeks for your daughter, and then you had a second child that you needed 12 weeks for, could the mom do 12 weeks and the dad do 12?
Yeah, you only get 12 weeks in a leave year.
In a leave year, yeah.
So
Right, but we're talking about a mom and a dad, right?
right. So each person, yeah. So say, and there are ways to work this out. But say the spouses are going to have a baby. The mom is going to take most of her time as her own serious health condition, no sharing required.
Exactly.
The dad could take his time as either caring for her, but she's not caring for somebody else. She's taking care of herself, so no sharing required. Or she's taking it at her own serious health condition, and he'll take it as bonding. So there are ways to even if the employer requires sharing, there are ways to minimize sharing, depending on how you characterize it. If you're talking about a childbirth situation.
Raise hand.
Aaron, on that.
John, hang on a second. Both Rob and DJ have had their hands up for a while, so I'm gonna make sure I acknowledge them first. Robert, did you want to go ahead?
I have a question with how this is going to impact the changes to the Connecticut FMLA. So prior to January 1st, the Connecticut FMLA was a 16-week entitlement over a 24-month period. I have at least one member who has exhausted their 16 weeks over the 24 months. So this upcoming year, they would not have access to any FMLA. Now, with the changes, you're switching to a 12-week format to kind of mirror the federal. Does this guy now have access to 12 weeks, whereas he's kind of in the middle of that 24-month window?
Yeah, Erin looks like she wants to answer because the DOL has spoken to this. Okay, great.
The DOL has actually issued a guidance on this, and it's on their website. So if you go to ct.gov and look up DOL, they have an FMLA paid leave website, and they've got this with examples. Basically, if you used up your full 16 weeks in the first of the first half of the 24-month period, you don't get a brand new 12 weeks right now under state. They might get it under federal, but they wouldn't get it under state. The state says you can kind of do a look back. So if the person comes to you in March of 2022 and says, I want to take 12 more weeks, they'd say, look back in the past 12 months. and you can subtract out any time that they've already taken. So to try to kind of split the difference basically between giving everybody a brand new 12 weeks and giving nobody any time. But their guidance is actually pretty detailed and offers examples depending for each. There's 4 ways you can calculate your leave year, and they have examples for each of those 4 ways.
So in a situation where this person wouldn't have any FMLA entitlement or CT-FMLA entitlement, but if the contract's written in such a way where if they go on short-term disability with their healthcare provider, would they be entitled to a supplement? You might have already answered this, and I apologize. Would they be entitled to a supplement through the CTPL program? Because that's completely separate.
They could get income replacement benefits from us, so they wouldn't have job protection. So, you know,
get the
but they
job
needed to take the
protection
leave.
from the
The
STD.
job protection's all FMLA, but if they don't need the job protection, or honestly, they can't work, right? Like job protection or not, they can't work. They could come to us. We don't look back at 2021 at all.
I just have a contract provision that's going to protect the worker's job from attendance related stuff. If regardless of if they qualify for FMLA, they can qualify for that as well, but it's a short-term disability benefit. So in that case, they could maybe get a little bit more money on top of what the short-term disability benefit would
That's
offer.
right.
You. Okay.
Exactly. That'll work for them. That'll work.
I just put the Department of Labor in the chat box for everyone, the link that Aaron referenced.
Thank you. I think DJ, then John, then the gentleman who are Teamsters 671.
Thanks, Andrea. So just really quick, can you run through logistically how this works in conjunction with the job protection portion of the laws? For instance, you know, we know we've been telling our members to apply for the CTPL, go on the website, they download the employer verification form, hand it over to the employer. Number one, do they still need to fill out the current Connecticut and federal family medical leave forms for that job protection? And what happens when you're actually utilizing it? Because we know they could go on consecutive leave and also intermittently. So we have a lot of employees that will take leave intermittently as much down to an hour a day. So how does that work with the paid leave? And is there a mechanism where the Connecticut paid leave speaks to the company to know when somebody is actually taking intermittent leave?
Yeah. All right. So I'll try to answer as many of the questions in there that you have. We encourage every single employee to apply for their family and medical leave, and then look at the paid leave portion as a way to access wage replacement while they're out. So this is what we teach employers. We say, look, the family and medical leave law for the state of Connecticut has changed now that it's 2022. And job protection attaches after 3 months of working for that employer, whether it's full-time or part-time. There's no hours worked requirement anymore. It attaches at the 3-month period. If you are taking family and medical leave at 3 months and 1 day, you're going to go to your employer and say, I'm taking FMLA because I have a serious health condition. You know, I'm going to go out and have this major surgery. Now your employer should be having a conversation with you about how you're going to get paid while you're out. And that could be short-term disability, any other policy. You may have a personal disability policy. And the other option that's available to you is to apply for your paid leave benefit. So, and then we have folks that come to us directly to the paid leave authority and say, I'm going to go out because I have a serious health condition and I'm going to be gone for 5 weeks. And what we always tell them is, you need to go back and talk to your employer, because we don't offer job protection at the paid leave authority. We only offer wage replacement up to the $780 a week, if that's what you qualify for. So we'll approve your benefit if you meet the criteria, right? Meaning you've currently worked, you've met the earnings criteria and the like. And that's fine. That's a different criteria than job protection. So you can take it, we'll approve it, but we can't guarantee that your job is going to be back for you. So I would not recommend that you just disappear because you've had your paid leave benefit approved. So that's how it works. And we approve block leave, reduced schedule leave, and intermittent leave. So for those that are on intermittent leave, they do have to check in with the paid leave authority more frequently. There's a bit of a different process for them. So they would apply the same way that they would for any other type of leave, but they have to report on a more frequent cadence while they're out, so that we know that they're out for an hour a day, 2 hours a day, So first of all, they can get paid accurately for the time that they are away. And second, to make sure that when they are taking their intermittent leave, because we're getting the same medical certifications that the employer is getting when the person is applying for FMLA. So if we see that there's a difference between your absence pattern and what's on your med cert, we're going to ask you about that because we have the right to do that. So I don't know, DJ, that answers. I tried to fit a lot in, and I think I got all your questions. Did I miss any of them?
No, I was just asking, that was perfect. But in addition, so
Okay.
there's technically no mechanism where the employer speaks with the state. It's on the employee themselves.
It is on the employee, but we do have a lot of employers that call and email and ask us, well, what's going on with this person's claim? For HIPAA reasons, there's only so much we can share, but we do tell employers that a person has applied, and we do tell employers whether the person's leave has been approved and how much they're getting and what that amount is, or if their paid leave benefit application has been denied. So there is some communication. But we don't go down to the level of the detail, what the claim was about, because all of that is obviously confidential, protected information. And that dialogue especially in the early part, is pretty vigorous with employers right now because we're new. And I imagine as time goes on and people are more accustomed, it may cut back a bit more.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So the gentleman at the team says, so your hand went down. Did I answer your question in the course of what I was asking?
You did. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Sure. Okay, John, I'm so sorry. Your hand's still up. I
By
apologize.
the way, I apologize. I just learned how to use this hand thing.
That's fine.
All right. So back to the health related and bonding issue in the case of a pregnancy. If the employee submits a document and the doctor has put down, just 6 weeks, as it kind of relates to the health portion of the leave, but the person really wants to have 12 weeks, that they have to submit something else to demonstrate that they want the additional 6 weeks on top of the first 6 weeks for bonding purposes?
They'll tell us. So, and they should tell their employer. But if you're talking just about applying for our benefits,
Yeah.
when they apply, they're going to say it's childbirth plus bonding.
Okay.
And so there's the med cert that talks about the pregnancy disability period, which is, the period of time it takes the woman to recover, before pregnancy, but also the time to recover after pregnancy.
Right.
And usually it's 6 to 8 weeks.
Right.
And then if they say, oh, but we also want to bond right away, we'll say, okay, great. We're going to ask for a birth certificate or statement of family relationship just to validate that they're the parent. But sort of it all happens kind of together, and they just upload the documents as they come in. The other way it could happen is sometimes, mostly kind of for reasons of making sure that you can kind of maximize the amount of time the baby is home and before you have to put the baby in daycare. A lot of times parents will stack or stagger their leave. So it might be that the pregnant parent says, I'm going to be home for 6 weeks and we're going to call this all my caregiver time. And then my spouse is going to be home to bond for 12 weeks. Let's make them work for a different employer so we don't have to worry about sharing. And then I'm going to come back and bond later. In that case, they would apply twice. But basically the same sort of documentation. It's just they would apply now for the pregnancy and then later for the bonding.
Can they do intermittent bonding, or would it have to be consecutive?
We just talked about this today. That's up to the employer. So FMLA says that the employer must allow for what we call block leave. They cannot deny block leave for bonding, but it's up to them whether to allow intermittent leave or reduced schedule leave for bonding, and the employer gets to decide kind of what frequency and schedule. So if the employer allows it, we'll provide benefits for it, and we're actually working through kind of what documentation is appropriate for us to ask so that we encourage people to get their job protection squared away. We don't want to sort of send people on this path where they're getting money from us since they think everything's wonderful, and have them go back to work and discover that they got in trouble, they lost their job. So we're trying to work through what is appropriate for us to establish that the intermittent or reduced schedule is approved by the employer.
Thank you.
I will say most employers don't really like intermittent leave for bonding. Reduced schedule you see more often because it's sort of better to have someone back part-time, but intermittent on bonding is kind of a nightmare. So none of us generally like it very much.
Val, you look like you've come off mute. You have a question?
Was that me?
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna, I wasn't gonna say anything, but just to go to your point, we really don't care what the employer's like. You know, we're here for the members, so.
That's
you
right.
know, if they may not like intermittent leave, too bad. If our people can get it, then we want it, so.
Right.
No, I just said that mostly so you know why
Yeah,
you may
yeah.
see a lot of employers not offer it.
Right. You may see some pushback.
This is John Santamaria from Teamsters Local 1150. I just had a quick question. You spoke about a little bit before about, or you mentioned about it should the state deny an individual claim for payment. What would be the dispute process on that? And if there's on that, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm sorry. So the statute requires that the Department of Labor manage any disputes regarding paid family and medical leave and family and medical leave in general. So that's their purview. There is an online appeals process. Actually, the one for paid leave went live on December 20th, and the one for family and medical leave will probably go live in the next week or so. So you'll be able to go onto the DOL website. There'll be some information when you go onto the site that sort of explains the difference between CTPL, what we do, and what FMLA is. And then if after reading that, you still feel that there's a misunderstanding or a dispute, then you can file your appeal electronically for either of them.
Okay.
And then from there, the Department of Labor manages it.
And it would the same general statute apply 180 days on usually on a DOL guideline for such a dispute?
I'm trying to think about the DOL regs. I think that's the number that they use, but I'd have to double check.
They changed the regs for this side of things to enable them to make decisions without always having a hearing, so that they can get decisions out faster for sort of more simple issues. I don't remember the time frames. I
don't remember either. I think it was much shorter than 180.
The other thing that we do have, again, trying to get decisions made quickly, we offer a reconsideration process, and we require any employer that has an approved private plan for offering paid leave benefits through a private plan instead of us. They also have to offer, as an option, not required, a reconsideration process. Usually our hope is that that will get disputes solved more quickly instead of having to go over to DOL, because
okay,
we weren't sure how long that would take.
All right, thank you. Just to follow up on what DJ had mentioned about intermittent pay in the process, what would be the turnaround for payment for someone, for instance, that was using intermittent leave and they had to use it, they had an occurrence probably, weekly. What would be the turnaround time for that person to get paid, generally speaking, from the state?
So right now in January, we have a 2 weeks in arrears process that's built in from the time that your claim meets final approval. We actually just met with AFLAC again today to close that up, and our goal is to close it up to 1 week. And it's going to take a little bit of doing because we realize that 2 weeks is just too long. One of the reasons that it was that long is that we needed to make sure that the person wasn't receiving unemployment insurance or the workers' compensation benefit at the same time, because we really don't want to put people, gentlemen, it's 6:71. I do see your hands. I'll be there in just a moment. That we didn't want to put people in a position where we pay them the benefit, we find out that they're getting unemployment insurance at the same time, and then we have to go back and say to them, you can't get both, so we're going to withhold a week from you, and then that causes, financial hardship. But what we're hearing from folks is that even though we were hoping to build in that time so that wouldn't happen, people need their money right away. So we're moving to a quicker schedule so that people can get paid, as soon as they can, as close to the time that the final approval the final approval decision is made. But with that said, when you file your application, you have about 15 days to get the first documents in. So that would be your medical certification, your military papers if you're being deployed overseas, whatever else that you might have. And if you can't get that, then we give you another 15 days. And then if you're still really having a lot of difficulty, we do have discretion to extend it to 45 days. But then we can't make a decision until we get everything in. So for some people, it could be a while. So we're really encouraging people to have as much stuff available as possible when you get it, because sometimes getting those medical certifications can take a while because your doctor is just, inundated with them. And some doctors are charging to fill them out too.
Okay, so just a quick follow-up. So just on a general claim, assuming all the documents have been submitted, there should be no longer than about a 2-week turnaround.
Right. So you trailed off a little bit there, but once everything is submitted, then we have a 5-day window in which to make a decision. And then once we move up, and this is what we're working on now, moving up the payment schedule, then you should get your check, within a week to 10 days after that, at the latest. Starting in February. We can't, for some reason, we can't change it for January, but that's a whole different story, but we're working on that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. The gentleman at Teamster 671 who have their hands up.
Hi, we have a lot of part-time and seasonal employees. Is there a minimum number of hours required?
No. No. So when the statute changed in this month, the hours worked requirement for FMLA went away. So a child protection attaches at 3 months, and there is no longer an hours worked requirement. There's also no hours. There's no full-time or part-time or per diem hours worked requirement to qualify for the paid leave benefit at all. You just have to meet that 23.25 that had to be earned in the highest quarter of the last 4 of the 5 completed quarters before you apply for your benefit.
So did you say they have to be there at least 3 months?
For job protection, yes.
Okay.
So there could be a scenario where you could work for an employer for fewer than 3 months. You have no job protection, but you could qualify for the paid leave benefit because you meet the criteria for getting a paid leave benefit. And that can happen. Let's say you worked for another employer for a year or so. We'll just use an even number. And then you go to employer B and you've been there 3 weeks and you realize that you have developed a serious health condition and now you need to take time. You don't have job protection at employer B, but you've made 23.25 in that highest earning quarter. You're currently working for an employer in the state of Connecticut, and you have a qualifying reason for leave. Those are essentially the 3 criteria that you need to meet in order to qualify for the paid leave benefit. So you could have somebody come in and say, I know I've only been here 3 weeks, but I got to have surgery. And the employer can say, well, I can't hold your job for you, or I will hold your job for you, or you recognize you don't have any job protection at all. We don't have to keep you here, obviously, unless you have something that you've negotiated in your collective bargaining agreement. You can go ahead and take your leave and you'll get your paid leave benefit if you qualify, but you won't have job protection under those circumstances. And that can happen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Andrea, one of the questions I heard indirectly in other areas are short-term but serious medical conditions. For instance, someone who's diagnosed with sleep apnea who can't work, but it may be intermittent the occasion. Maybe they have a good week, they're sleeping fine, they're going to work, they have a bad couple days. Do they have to file every time? Is there a way to be kind of pre-approved for that?
Yeah, so those are our chronic conditions.
Okay.
The definition is you see a doctor and receive treatment from the doctor for the condition, and you have to see the doctor for that condition at least twice a year. So you can't say, like at my regular physical, and then, I go in for a flu shot. You're seeing the doctor for that condition at least twice a year. But so you apply and you say, hey, I have this condition that has flare-ups. I'm going to need intermittent leave. And you kind of apply once per year. This is true for the FMLA side as well as for us. So you apply once per year, and then when you have a flare-up, you call into your employer and say, I'm having a flare-up, I need to take my FMLA, or you go into your account that you've created with us at CTP Leave and report that, hey, I had a flare-up this week, I was out for 3 days. It's really pretty common. Honestly, there's just a lot of conditions where people can work a bit.
Yeah,
but
no,
then
and
they
we're
turn,
not trying to
that's covered.
create non-work. We have people who are willing and able, and they
Yep.
know when they can and they know when they can't. Just that's helpful. So should they upload that? I don't know if it's a script or something that proves they went to the doctor for that condition.
It's part of the application process. So the med cert that you get when you apply is going to ask the doctor to complete and describe what is the serious health condition this person has. And so one of the options is a chronic condition. The form we are encouraging people to use kind of does it in a step-by-step way. So it's like, oh, chronic condition, please tell us the last 2 times you saw the person.
I see. Okay, good.
We'll accept, like this DOL has a sample form, the state of Connecticut has a sample form for our employees. We'll accept med certs from that don't have the Aflac name on it if it has all the information we need. And frankly, most employers do too. The FMLA regulations tell them they have to, but when they apply for the benefit, they're going to get that information up front. And then when they call out, they don't have to provide a new med cert. They just have to say, this is that condition. I had a really bad week with the sleep apnea. I had a flare up of my, migraines or whatever. You don't need a new med cert every time you call out.
And should they alert the HR department in advance or to avoid? I don't know.
Yeah, again, if they're gonna go to their own HR department for their FMLA, and then they'll follow their call-in procedures, whatever they are. And when they call out, it's really important, and their HR should tell them this, but it's really important when you call out on an approved FMLA to say, I'm calling out because of that FMLA condition I have.
Noted. Okay.
Not just say I'm sick today.
Right.
Because I'm sick today doesn't equate to I'm having a flare-up of my chronic fatigue syndrome. I'm approved for chronic fatigue. I want to say this is my FMLA approved condition. And it's one of the best things I think FMLA has done for workers is it eliminates the need to provide a med cert every time you're out, because that's a huge burden. Like if you have a condition, you're not going to the doctor every time. And
you're in no state to go and get it that day or go, you don't want to spend time. Right. Okay.
And and those are often the conditions where the managers and supervisors get most annoyed. Everyone feels bad for you if you break your leg. Everyone is happy for you when you have a baby. PJ.
Yeah.
But the person who calls out for a migraine, people can get annoyed. And so this is an area where that protection is really important.
Oh, and that's where we were finding, I think they'll tell you, I think there was even some, I don't want to say abuse, but, negative behavior towards the worker.
Yeah, and that happens. And that's one of the reasons why when you call in, you really want to advise your workers to make sure that they say that it's FMLA, because it provides them with that protection against retaliation.
Yeah.
Then I think that's really critical. And it also allows the employer to keep track of the number of hours that the person is using, because, once they've exceeded, I shouldn't say hours, but the number of weeks. But usually with intermittent leave, it can take quite a while to get up to those 12 weeks because you're using it in hourly increments quite often. But you don't want to find yourself as a worker in a position where you're at 11 weeks and 23 hours, and you call in the next day and then you've used up your 12, and then now you're outside of the job protection with your FMLA. That's why it's really critical to make sure that they keep track, and they have the right to ask their employer, like, how many hours have I used? Because they need to be able to know that to exercise their job protection. So I see Rocco's hands up and DJ's hand up again.
So just
right?
real quick,
Yeah.
yeah, just really quick. The calculation for pay for someone on intermittent leave, is it just simply whatever benefit they're entitled, weekly benefit they're entitled to, divided by 40 if they decide they're going to take, 3 hours this week, or?
Well, it all depends on, we ask for your weekly schedule because we know that people, a lot of people work shift work, per diem work. We have lots of first responders where their schedule changes week to week. So they may work, 30 hours one week and 50 hours another week. So we ask for your weekly schedule in the 12 weeks prior to the time that you're applying for your leave. And then we also have access to Department of Labor wage data, so we can go in and then verify your wages and also verify that you've made the 23-25 in that highest earning quarter, so that we can use that data to make sure that we do the appropriate calculation for what your wages are. So we don't just kind of take it and divide it. It's specific to how much you earn based on the schedule you work.
So again, I don't think I understand that. So I work a 40-hour schedule, right?
Yeah.
I work at 9 to 5. I get pre-approved for intermittent leave. I have a flare-up. I'm going to be late 2 hours, or I got to leave 2 hours. So let's just say my weekly benefit, through the formula came out to the $780 a week.
Mm-hmm.
For each one of those hours, it's just 1/40th of that. Is that how you?
That's right, because that's your schedule.
Okay.
But given that it's applicable to people who work part-time, if they're working 20 hours a week, then it's going to be 1/20th of their pay on their schedule, as an example.
The other thing, just for your members to know, if someone can't work overtime because they're a caregiver or because of their own serious health condition, it's really important for the employer to consider those overtime hours when they're thinking about what their week is, because they're also going to deduct those hours not worked when they don't work overtime. So you want to make sure that they're calculating it correctly. If I average 50 hours a week, my entitlement is 12 weeks of 50-hour weeks.
Oh, really?
And if I can't work overtime, maybe I'm drawing down 8 hours a week from that entitlement, but you want to make sure that they calculated it off of 50 times 12, not 40 times 12. So, the federal regulations and the state regulations tell employers to do this, but particularly if you know that you've got members who do a lot of part-time work or overtime work, it's really important to make sure that the HR is doing it correctly so that your members get the benefits they're entitled to.
So under that scenario, that's mainly for pay. I mean, it wouldn't expand to 12 weeks, right?
Well, it doesn't expand the 12 weeks total, but say it's intermittent leave and you're going to be out 3 hours a week. You want your 12 weeks to equate to 600 hours, not 480 hours, because you work 50 hours a week. I think I did the math right there. So if you, particularly for intermittent folks, it's important to make sure that they get the weekly average correct.
Okay.
But you still get 12 weeks of your work week.
Yeah. Okay.
But it makes a difference to people, particularly for employers who deduct the unworked overtime, but didn't account for it at the beginning, because now they're getting much less than they're entitled to.
Exactly. DJ?
So I'm not implying that employees will do this because we all represent very stand-up members, but is there anything that will prevent an employee for applying for, let's just say, intermittent leave? It has already been approved and, they submitted schedules that, let's just say, they need to take an hour a day. And they go in and they tell the state, I have taken an hour every day this week of family medical leave from my employer. I want to be paid for that. Is there any mechanism to verify that they have actually taken that absence from work and not has gone to work and basically double dipped?
Aaron, do you want to answer that? You want me to?
I was waiting to see if you wanted to.
Okay, all right. So the answer is yes, because although we all have stand-up people that work for us, and we know we do, we also understand that human nature is what it is. So, and that's one of the reasons why we have folks who are on intermittent leave checking in more frequently, and built into our process is a regular unscheduled audit of intermittent claims. So we will choose employers and make calls to make sure that the intermittent leaves are being taken in the manner in which they are being reported. If we see that there's a deviation from that pattern, or the person is actually coming to work, that we consider that fraud. And under the statute, we do have the ability to block a person from receiving a paid leave benefit for 2 years if they're engaging in fraud. So a lot of people need to know that. And we also have the ability to assess penalties and fines for that as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I ask because sometimes Erin has her favorite questions that she likes to answer, and I don't necessarily want to take that opportunity from her. So
I got to go with my hobby horse about the average work week, so I'm happy.
Yeah, okay.
Well, and to that point, is there something you think we should be aware of that's coming up over and over and over that we may not be thinking of?
No, I think you've all, well, first of all, I want to thank you for your time because you've asked excellent questions. I think that the significant change in FMLA from, the 16 weeks in a 24-month period and the hours worked requirement is confusing to a lot of employers, especially maybe smaller ones who never had any interaction with FMLA before, and even the larger employers who are not understanding how significantly the laws change and how much more challenging it is now to run it concurrently with federal FMLA because of the differences in when job protection attaches. So I would just be very vigilant around rules that employers make, sometimes in good faith, based on just their misunderstanding of how family and medical leave has changed significantly from the way it even worked last year to this year. And so that's the other thing. And I still think there's a lot of confusion about FMLA and Connecticut paid leave and how those two things work together. So, we offer a lot of training. I think at this point, we've probably done well over 100 webinars on it, and we will do them over and over and over again. So if you find like your members want, any of your respective members want to, you think there's some employers that you want to refer to us, we are happy to do those sessions for them so that they can have a clear understanding. And we do the exact same thing we're doing now. We have a slide presentation we give, and then half the time is spent just answering questions that people just pose to us about what their questions are about FMLA and paid leave. And we'll be doing them now with representatives from the Department of Labor, so that when you have questions about the FMLA piece of what we all do together, they will be available to answer those questions. So that's what I would say. You're going to have some employers that are just not going to get it right, and you just really need to be vigilant around that.
Thank you. And to that point, is there a key point person at Labor who's been assigned to this, a deputy or a?
Well, she knows where I live, so I don't know if I should do that, but it's Heidi Lane. So.
No, I meant from so we don't start, because sometimes you send emails to the wrong people, right?
Yeah.
That'll help us at least be targeted.
Yeah, it's Heidi Lane, and
Thank
Heidi
you.
is very open. You know Heidi?
Yes, yeah, no,
Yeah,
she's great.
that's the person.
I'm glad to hear she's there. And one last question I just had for the group was, when there is an issue that they feel they need to, maybe reports too strong a word, but notify you of, what's the best channel? What's the best means to do that?
So there's a couple of ways to do it. One is that we have this contact us feature on our website because we don't have a call center. We hear about that a lot, but call centers are ridiculously expensive, and we just think there's a better way to use workers' money, so we don't have a call center. So you can use the contact us feature and submit your question. If this group has a specific question, PJ, they can send it to you or they can email us directly.
Okay.
It'll take us a minute to get back to you because there's not a lot of us that work at the authority that can answer. The people can basically answer your questions of the three of us and a couple more staff for the entire state. So we're a little limited, but we'll do the best that
Really
we
is
can.
amazing what you're doing with so little, and you're doing it well compared to many of the other startup entities. And I did get, in some of my questions, I did end up on the Aflac line, and they were very helpful. I don't know where they were, but the people were very helpful. And again, just so I'm clear on that, that's really about the processing, right? They're not going to handle any of these procedural things that Chevry or Fussell may call by. It's going to be more
right.
Once the claim, where's my money? Okay.
Yeah, they do all of that. So the other thing I want to tell you is that I should have remembered this because we just implemented it. If you go onto the website and you choose the contact us feature, there's a pull down there that says, I'm a small business and I have a question. And there's a special unit that we have that answers questions for small businesses. And I know a lot of you aren't representing small businesses, but sometimes you can get a quicker answer, and don't tell them I told you that. Sometimes you can get a quicker answer if you go there, because they're equipped to answer a lot of those questions too.
Versus just a generic where it has to get routed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
PJ,
No, that's very helpful. I'll put that in the
PJ,
chat
you're
box.
right about the Aflac folks who are also in Windsor. We contracted with them to handle the claims. So if you've got a pending claim, if you're like, I can't get my doctor to fill out my med cert, what do I do? Where's my money? You will have, actually, you'll get assigned your own claim person, so you'll be able to get those answered quickly. And they answer the phones, they answer email, they go online. But for those general questions about the program, our website is the best source. And I think DOL hasn't implemented it yet, but they were talking about creating a FMLA specific email address. And I don't have it yet because I don't think it's live yet.
No.
But they know they're going to get a lot of FMLA claims, particularly from all of the 1 to 49 employers.
Probably not ours, but yeah.
Trying to get a faster process. Just today, in fact, I got like half a dozen emails from various people at DOL who had received CT paid leave questions, and they kicked them over to us to answer. But they are trying to staff up on the FMLA side so you can get a faster answer that way. But Heidi is always sort of.
Yeah, thank you. I'm putting in the chat both the main page and Andrea, you're saying go to the contact us tab.
Yeah, which I just put in the chat.
Oh, you did it too. Okay, it was just good.
Yeah, Andrea, I don't know how you guys keep putting this hand up because I can't find it on my screen, but
it's in the little thing that says reactions.
I got
you got to be in a special club. Only certain people
listen,
are
I'm
let in on
special.
that.
I'm special. Don't worry about that.
Sorry.
I mean, I got a pin. I see a pin next to my name, so I don't know what that is and how.
No, if you go to the bottom, you see the little thing that says reactions.
Yeah.
The smiley face, Sal.
Okay, so listen,
and that's how you raise your hand.
Okay.
Next time.
The question I have is, my last thing is, and I've been trying to not find this on the website, navigate through it. Is there anywhere we can go to get a bullet point pamphlet or flyer or something?
Yeah.
Because what's the easiest way to get it? Can you give it to us? Can we?
I can. So the easiest way to get it, and we apologize because it's nothing you need to know about, but technically it's where we can only put it. Go to the employer page, scroll down to the bottom, and you will find everything. You'll find 4 different ways to explain what paid family medical leave is, because we know that people take in information differently. There's also, for employers that haven't started taking out money, which I hope none of the employers of the people that you represent are in there. There's a paycheck mailer that explains where the 0.5% is going, and that's where you can go. For employees, there's also if you go to the site and it says the process, you pull that down. There's an employee site that explains the whole thing, the benefits. what you get, how long, how you apply, all of it. There's a little calculator on there that you can put in, how much you make, and it'll tell you how much you need to contribute. And then when you go to the claim side, there's another calculator that you can put in the amount, and it'll tell you generally how much you might get in your benefits. So it's all there. So what I would tell you is go to the employer site, go down to the bottom, you will find virtually everything you need. You don't have to do all this stuff yourself. That was never our intention that you do this on your own.
And I'm doing that now, Andrea, and I'll email the group, Sal. So there's some nice 2-page fact sheets. I see them all. Yeah, really good.
All right.
We can even rebrand it a little if you don't mind. You could throw a
We don't
logo.
mind.
Yeah, good.
We often see our stuff show up in places we're like, okay, that's ours.
Yeah, we won't change the details, but maybe just so people know it's coming from a reputable, make from the local that has their name on it. They may look and pay more attention to it.
Please do. That's why we
thank you.
designed it. Absolutely.
Well, this is great. You've been very generous with your time. I don't want to keep you longer. Does anyone have any last minute questions? Obviously, they've been so responsive both before, during, and after. And I want to thank you for that, Andrea and your team,
Our pleasure.
and Aaron. Aaron, we miss you
PJ.
at DAS. I'm sorry, I have to tell you.
PJ,
Miss
I just
BAS,
want
but-
to thank you for putting this together on behalf of all of us. I want to thank Andrea, Aaron, and Michael for coming on. And, this was very helpful, very informative.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure.
keep up the great work.
Anytime. Let us
Thank
know.
you, Andrea. Yeah.
You're welcome. Okay. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank
All
you.
right, good night. Take care.
Thank you.